You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everybody. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America, and my name is Rebecca Weber. I'm very happy today to have with me two great people. They're part of AMAC Action's leadership team, and today they're going to talk to you about AMAC's major priorities. We can't, of course, give you we don't want to spend hours and hours giving you every single issue that AMAC is working on, but we will consistently bring to you the issues that AMAC is primarily focused on. And today we're going to talk to you about those 6 major issues. So with us today, we have Bob Carlstrom. Bob leads AMAC Action, which is the advocacy affiliate of AMAC, and he brings a credential that is a blend of senior executive business, government, and politics. He actually served as senior executive in the Reagan White House Office of Management and Budget, and he studied law at Wayne State University Law School. We also have with us Andy Mangione. Andy, he serves as AMAC's point person on Capitol Hill. Andy leads our national grassroots platform, which is the AMAC Action Delegate Program. And as our senior vice president for AMAC's advocacy arm, AMAC Action, Andy leads the outreach activity across the country, and he represents the interests of AMAC's membership in Washington, D.C. He's also our national spokesperson, and he frequently writes for AMAC, so check out his great articles on our website at amac.us. Andy and Bob, thank you so much for being with me today. Very happy to have you both here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Andy, we're going to turn the first issue that AMAC is really squarely focused on over to you, and that is election reform. We want to be careful that we don't get, turned off, Andy. Okay, so what I mean by that is all the censorship that we're seeing, and is certainly on platforms like Facebook and Twitter. But what I really want our listeners to understand is that election reform is absolutely necessary. We know that it's been a problem even long before Donald Trump ran for office. We know the stories of our past, and we recognize that things seem to be getting worse. Our membership cares so much about the integrity of our elections, as do we. So can you share with our listeners some of the major things that we're working on and the ways in which we think we can be effective to bring about?
Be happy to, Rebecca.
Thank you.
I think we can start this out. We can preface this with the activity that AMAC took back in December. I think that the states painted a very clear picture. Some states, battleground states, about some of the improprieties that took place in their states. This is not AMAC saying, hey, the election was bad. These were state elected representatives and senators saying, hey, we had some shenanigans going on here. We need to investigate this. So we took a closer look at it, and we activated our membership back in December on a couple of occasions, to the point where we had an overwhelming response from AMAC members in those battleground states to ask their state legislatures to make sure that every legal vote counted, and to make sure that the free and fair elections were going to be held moving forward. So we're going to build on that in 2021. And what AMAC is planning to do, we have meetings set up already, and we've already had some discussions with key groups such as True the Vote, as well as ALEC, a state association. And we're going to be looking at working with other state associations to target specific states where clearly help is needed to make sure that they have free and fair elections. What I mean by that is that the processes are tightened up. The rules are being followed. The rules are in place, okay? Some rules need to be reformed. We're going to be working on that reform. And some rules need to be created to make sure that every vote counts. And we heard from our members. They were looking for something to do. They were looking to get involved. They were very concerned that their vote didn't count. And we know that they're engaged based on the response that we received from them when we ran a couple of campaigns back in December that were associated with the general election.
And you know what's so great, Andy, is that we really do see a grassroots effort on the state level, and that's led primarily by our wonderful AMAC delegates and chapter presidents. And these are folks who really love our country. They care about what we're doing. And they understand that there are over 2 million Americans that are have made their voice very clear right here with AMAC, and they've said we need to have real faith in our elections. They must be free and fair. And so we're excited to work across the aisle because there have been some really good people who have said throughout the last 10 years that, there's certainly we need to look at the way in which we gather votes, vote harvesting, and all of that kind of stuff. It's so important. So we're excited to work at the forefront on that effort. Another major initiative, Bob, did you want to comment at all? I know that you've been working alongside many of our folks on election reform.
Thank you very much. We're going to be collaborating with other allied groups on that as well, and we really look forward to that because a number of other conservative organizations have been very upset by what has happened, and so we're going to be engaging as part of a coalition on that as well. And so we do look forward to some positive results, hopefully over the next year and a half in the states.
That is good news. Go ahead, Andy. Yeah.
That based on the response from our members with regard to this, election integrity issue, we are forecasting a pretty significant increase in building our AMAC Army, if you will. And what I mean by AMAC Army, these are our advocates, our volunteer advocates, our delegates to specifically get involved in the election integrity issue. So it's going to be a big year for us with surrounding this issue.
Yeah, and this should be important to all Americans. This is not, a Republican issue. This is not and should not just be, something that only people on the right want to attack. This really is something that every American should care about and should support. So, we're very proud to lead the charge on ensuring that we do have free and fair elections and working with people who want to bring about common sense solutions. So I'm very proud of our team for really leading and paving the way for others who have great ideas and ways in which we can ensure that the future elections of this nation are free and fair. And it brings me to another major issue that we're really recognizing more and more today in everyday life, and that is censorship. Censorship and free speech, I think, are of primary concern to so many of our members, and it really is very valid. Out of habit, I tend to put Fox News on in the morning. I do love some of the hosts are really wonderful and some very smart people. But some of what we're hearing out of the left, those guests that they have on their show, for example, are almost making people feel that if you don't agree with their ideology, that there's something wrong with you. And I think that we're also seeing folks who what they see and witness with their own eyes is not really what they're hearing or reading about in mainstream media. So I'll use an example. AMAC is 100% against all political violence. And it's a shame that on January 6th that what started out as a peaceful rally developed into something much worse. And so we oppose political violence at all levels. Sadly, those couple of hundred people that did some really wrong things, while they should be labeled as having done wrong things and they should be held accountable for their actions, we can't ignore the folks that are running around in cities, burning buildings and destroying businesses. And these groups, such as Antifa, for example, we saw what happened just after Biden was inaugurated, that there was a breakout of Antifa, and now they're coming down on him. So I think the nation as a whole needs to call out political violence, and we need to hear mainstream media say and call out this type of violence as well. We can't just call out the people on the right. We've got to look at this as being wrong for America and do something about it. So I fault mainstream media with delivering news that isn't always accurate. And we know that Section 230, everybody has heard of that. My understanding, Andy and Bob, is that one of the major flaws of Section 230 is it allows for these social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter to censor what information they're going to allow and what information they're going to either remove entirely or repress. We saw that Donald Trump was removed from Twitter's platform. We saw what happened to Parler. And while I do understand that we do need to ensure that we're not allowing real bad guys to lead the way on social media and manipulate the minds, especially of young people. There's a very fine line there. So Section 230 is something that I just want to share with our listeners. We had actually supported a bill, and that bill, unfortunately now, that was with the 116th Congress. That was support for H.R. 8922. It was the Break Up Big Tech Act. And what that would really do is it would say any legal immunity would be eliminated for social media platforms who act as publishers by using algorithms to moderate or censor content without opt-in from users. Now, unfortunately, this bill will need to be reintroduced, but I'd like to turn this over to you, Andy, first. And Bob, I'd like to hear you comment as well. How can AMAC be effective in ensuring that Americans, their First Amendment right of free speech is protected and that we're not targeted because of hosting a show like this one right here this morning?
Right. And Rebecca, I think it's important to point out that, as you well know, AMAC members set our legislative agenda. And we polled our members as to what our priorities should be for 2021. And the censorship of conservative voices polled very high. Yeah. Our members clearly want us to address this issue. Now, that bill hopefully will be reintroduced in Congress, but we also, working on the state level with regard to the election integrity issue, we think we have some options on the state level where North Dakota, for example, has already proposed a bill that will allow their citizens to sue big technology platforms, the social media platforms, for censorship. We're taking a close look at that, want to get some sample legislation developed that we could give to our advocates to go in on the state level and say, hey, look what they're doing over in North Dakota. Perhaps we could do that across the country.
I mean, that's really putting pressure on big tech. And I'm reading just a printout of an article that you had forwarded to me, Andy. And essentially it says here, for individuals who have been censored, compensation would include things like damages that were incurred by that individual who was censored. And so when you put that kind of pressure on big tech to say, wait a minute, you might see a slew of lawsuits coming in, at least this North Dakota bill would let censored citizens file lawsuits against Facebook and Twitter. That should shake them up a little bit. I think that this is something our members would be in full support of, this kind of thing, because we certainly can't allow for people who just share their ideas. And these are ideas we all love America. We love our flag. We love our freedoms. And we love the fact that we have a Bill of Rights that really protects us and affords us these rights that we believe are, many of which are really God-given, unalienable rights. So these kinds of efforts, I think, are really, really important, and we'll watch this and inform our listeners as to the development of what's happening in North Dakota. Bob, on the Section 230, have you been working with other groups and with other folks that are really also finding ways to ensure that big tech does not get all too powerful and big and further manipulate the news that we read?
Yeah, but the groups are convening on that because there's widespread concern about the suppression of free speech, as well as what has happened to major media over the years, where they've morphed into very, very selective reporting on the news too, and leaving out critical information that would essentially clear or give a full perspective to the viewers. But with regard to the suppression of speech, it has been pretty hideous in terms of the deprivation of American citizens of the right to know, and their ability to do that and to suppress speech like that has gone too far in terms of the safe harbor that Section 230 provides. They need to have liability and accountability to it. They have, as the fourth estate, they have too important a role, and they've deviated from that, and they've taken hold in almost a despotic way in terms of trying to tell people essentially, this is what we want you to know, and this is how we want you to know it. And so the suppression of free speech, as well as the selective reporting and incomplete reporting, has been a real challenging issue for us, and one that needs to be corrected going forward.
Yeah, and I just want to urge folks, content and information can be found on our website. And it's really becoming, our members are telling us, really a number one news source is the very articles published on our website, because we're not going to, we're going to bring you the truth. We're going to report on the information that you won't find in mainstream. Check out our information at amac.us. I do think it's so important because one of the reasons why many people don't maybe believe that there's a need for election reform is because so many of the issues relating to confusion around the 2020 election, those stories, in my opinion, they were not made front and center. Mainstream did not want the American people to panic or worry that maybe we had issues in the way in which we run our elections. But these are things that problems don't go away when they're hidden from us. They just become bigger problems, and then they wind up being solved by people that don't always have the best answers. So AMAC is uncovering those issues, and we're going to bring those issues to you. Bob, I want to turn to you on our major initiative of really protecting Social Security. And I just want to give a quick background. For folks that maybe don't understand AMAC's position with Social Security, it has been an issue that we have been fighting and working on your behalf since day one. Social Security, we know it's a government program, but it's your money. It's money that you've earned that's been taken out of your paycheck. Your employer has also contributed towards your future Social Security check. And so this is money that the government has said, if you give it to us, you can never touch it. But when you reach Social Security retirement age, you'll have a retirement benefit. But we know that Social Security isn't nearly enough to really protect seniors, especially those elderly seniors that can't work part-time beyond the age of, say, 65 or 70 years old. Even my grandmother, it was her sole source of income, and it was not enough for her to really live on. So AMAC wants to ensure a few things. One, that you get your money when it's time to collect. For people my age and younger folks, we need to be concerned. And number two, we want to make sure that there's a cost of living increase for the folks that are earning the least amount of money. But Bob, can you tell us what AMAC's proposal looks like? Can you expand on that and share with folks what we've done and what we're doing to really protect Social Security into the future?
Oh, I'm glad to, and I'm honored to. Our founder, Dan Weber, conceived of the idea of creating a Social Security guarantee legislation, using the word guarantee to ensure and assure the American people and those looking forward to or on Social Security that they will continue to have it. So dealing with Social Security and the looming insolvency of the Retirement Trust Fund in 2035 has been something that the Congress has been kicking down the road. Dan was pursuing this for so many years, and finally I think the issue is definitely ripening. The Social Security guarantee would restore long-term solvency to the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund for 75 years without increasing the payroll tax. And this is done by some simple adjustments in the core of the Social Security Act, and also guaranteeing a cost of living increase each year to people based on their relative income levels according to the poverty levels at the time. And so those in most need would get the higher percentage COLA. Those with the least need in terms of a higher income level would get a smaller one. And it's a good thing because it puts the money where it needs to go. And sadly, Social Security has been sort of the third rail of politics, but it is really now right. And the great thing about the Social Security guarantee is that it removes the third rail and it makes it easy for people to fix it. So we expect that we will be very fully engaged in this new Congress, in the Social Security subcommittees and the tax committees to get our principles enacted because they are sound and they avoid increasing taxes, which have a dislocational effect, on businesses, particularly small businesses. And so I'm very proud and very anxious to get to work. We do expect also that the Social Security Foundation, with their expertise in that, will join us in testifying before the subcommittees in the House and the Senate on this. and getting our message across, because it is a very, very important one. Another thing to remember, too, is that when insolvency does occur, it doesn't mean that the trust fund ceases to operate. It just shifts it to a cash basis. So it'll be revenues in, money out, but it'll cause what we project to be a reduction across the board in the Social Security retirement trust fund benefit. But nonetheless, I think with this new Congress and perhaps with this new administration, we can have some courage to deal with this in a good way.
Bob, thank you so much. It is an issue that should be important, again, to all Americans. This is what we rely on when we reach our in older years and later years, when our working years are behind us. And this is your own money. So we do expect that the government will get smart and address this issue. And this is another issue that I'm excited that we can perhaps work across the aisle, because AMAC really is committed to working for you, the American people, especially those people 50 and over, but we do work for all Americans. And it's so important that we address Social Security for the younger people. I want to make sure that it's there for my children and my grandchildren. And if we do nothing, it won't be there. Another tip is for more information on the Social Security guarantee and for the things that Bob spoke about, you can visit our website. You can go to amacaction.org, or you can go to amac.us. There's tons of information. We've got links on each site that'll bring you back to each site and to speak more on the issues. I'll have you remind everybody at the end, Bob, where to find all that information. I want to jump into healthcare. Healthcare is a fourth priority, not necessarily in that order, but it is very, very important because the health care, and let's not confuse health care with health insurance. Health care in America is, in my opinion, the greatest in the world. We've got the most innovative doctors. We've got marvelous, mechanisms in place in order to treat people quickly. If you compare us to other nations, for example, people still come to the United States to find the best care. And we want to ensure that a universal healthcare system doesn't crush the great healthcare that we currently are afforded. And we have seen what's occurred with Obamacare. I mean, sadly, our healthcare system has not been that strong. We've got to strengthen it. And so I want to turn to you, Andy. You've done so much work in this area. AMAC opposes Medicare for all. Andy, share with our listeners, AMAC's stance on Medicare for all and what we're doing, what we've done and what we're going to be doing to ensure, because we've got some really innovative ideas to help lower the cost of healthcare and also bring healthcare to those people who can't afford it.
Well, AMAC members, Rebecca, were intimately involved in setting the verbiage, if you will, or making suggestions for an executive order that was issued by the Trump administration to compel hospitals to disclose their prices. It's called price transparency. And this was a victory for us in the last Congress.
That's great.
And AMAC members were fully engaged and their voices were heard. This is what we've done. And when you have a transparent healthcare system, starting with hospital price transparency, prices will drop. Now, we'll see if that rule stands with the new administration, but as of now, it's in effect. And AMAC members had a huge part in the creation of the final rule. AMAC members are, as you know, are very concerned about Medicare for all. So AMAC will continue to work with the coalition known as Free to Care. And if you recall, Rebecca, this is the coalition of physician and patient advocates to reform healthcare. One of the things that occurred, again, that was a success in the 116th Congress was the rebate rule. As you know, drug manufacturers pay what, I'm going to use air quotes, a rebate to pharmacy benefit managers to access the millions of lives that pharmacy benefit managers manage. And they're managing a pharmacy benefit for their clients. The rebate rule, President Trump signed into an executive order back in July, and we were all there for that signing.
Yes.
What that does is compel PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, to share some of that rebate with Medicare beneficiaries at the pharmacy counter to lower their out-of-pocket expenses. That was a victory. All right. Now we'll see if that rule stands with the new administration. But that goes right to the bottom line and the out-of-pocket expenses for Medicare beneficiaries. We're going to continue to keep an eye on group purchasing organizations. Right now, we're still experiencing drug shortages that studies have shown, and these are government studies, have shown can in part be attributed to the relationships that group purchasing organizations have with their suppliers. So that drives up the cost of prices and deprives people of, and sometimes life-saving medications that are administered in hospitals. But with regard to Medicare for All, AMAC is on record as opposing it. The Free to Care Coalition wants nothing to do with Medicare for All. Innovation will be stifled. You cannot have a one-size-fits-all healthcare plan. We've been fighting for transparency that we know will increase competition and will lower costs. We also know that people should have the freedom to choose the type of health care they need for their specific family, for their individual needs, without being forced to take benefits that they may or may not use. We already saw that with Obamacare. We do not want to see this repeated with Medicare for All. And AMAC is a staunch opponent to Medicare for All. And we will do everything and work with anyone to make sure that it does not become a reality.
Thank you. Yeah, Bob, thank you so much, Andy. And Bob, I know that you as well have been working side by side with Andy on this issue. Can you speak at all to some of the issues relating to healthcare and veterans, Bob? Because we want to ensure that our veterans have access to great medical services. They deserve it. AMAC honors our veterans, and to all of you listening who have served, thank you so much. And we are committed to ensuring that your health care is top of the notch. There is no reason why you should be waiting months on end for a surgery or to even have a doctor look at you for that matter. So in the way of veterans, I know, Bob, that you're working with various groups.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca. Veterans are a significant priority of many of our members are veterans, and their children are veterans, and so we've done a number of things on that. But first of all, we absolutely endorse the use of vouchers to enable veterans to go to the medical care service provider of their choice, particularly if there are delays in the inability or distance that makes going to a Veterans Administration facility very difficult. And so we strongly support the increased use of vouchers to enable veterans in need of medical services of any kind to go to the healthcare provider of their choice. Secondly, veterans are a very important component of our business environment in terms of owning small businesses and developing that. And we're totally committed to advancing veteran opportunity to open in small business and create jobs for others. I would also add, too, that our AMAC Foundation, with whom we've been working on this, has now established a clearinghouse, a national online clearinghouse for veterans information, particularly in those families in where PTS, post-traumatic syndrome, is still an issue. And we would urge all of our members to take a look at that, because the amount of information is extremely important on that and very helpful. Also, in that connection, we've worked out agreements with both the Veterans Administration as well as called Hiring Our Heroes, which is part of the National Chamber of Commerce Foundation, to further assist veterans in all dimensions of their health care, employment, and otherwise. So that's a great new effort that we've put together, and we're very excited about it. And we're also getting a lot of traction and use of it now.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. It's great to hear the great work that we're doing here in down in DC, which is where you are, Bob and Andy. And we've got a whole team that supports Andy and Bob. So we truly are committed to blocking all congressional efforts to pass any type of Medicare for All or public health care program, because we understand that will not be good for America. Rather than get into more detail on that, because that will be a separate topic. And matter of fact, I'd love to have both of you back so we can really get into AMAC's healthcare, the details around AMAC's healthcare alternatives to Obamacare. And we've got some fabulous ideas. But I want to talk about the national debt, because that is a fifth initiative of AMAC's. And we all should be concerned that when you've got Democrats in, we know that they love social programs. They want to expand government. And one of the ways in which they do that is they spend more money on more and more programs, whether or not we need them, it seems. So my concern is that keeping that, we know that national debt has grown significantly, and so many of our members have said, come on, we've got to do something about this. So, Bob, share with our members the kinds of work that you're doing. I know you've met even just over this last week. You're meeting with folks to talk about ways to tackle our national debt. And how are we going to do that while we oppose any type of federal tax increases? I mean, American people are overtaxed, and AMAC is absolutely against any type of federal tax increase. So we're going to have to tighten our belts. How do you think that the Biden administration is going to cut spending? This is a big mountain to climb, but we're committed to doing some work. So share with us how we're going to chip away at addressing this growing national debt.
I'm glad to, and I know the Biden administration is going to be a really significant challenge in trying to get a hold of and develop requirements and standards and for the federal government to essentially reduce both their taxes and spending, and to really develop strong financial management tools in this. This is a real serious issue, and imagine first in your own family budget, to our listeners out there, if you ran up debt like that, you would be really in deep trouble. Well, the same thing is ultimately happening to our country in terms of the runaway debt, which has just been multiplied, hundreds and actually 1 million times since our founders over the last, since our founders. Essentially what is happening, and the danger in all that, and it's a real thing, it's not an academic thing, is if the debt gets so totally out of control and we don't put in place mechanisms by which to govern and guide the Congress and the executive branch on their spending, we will find our currency further devalued on the world market, and that's a big deal. And that will directly affect all families, all businesses, all jobs, and it sets the stage for perhaps another country even becoming the global standard for monetary units, and we don't want that to happen. And out there lurking on that question is China. So it's all part of that. So what we've been doing is working and developing a concept with the Reason Foundation and a fellow by the name of John Ramsey, which is called the Bill of Financial Responsibilities. And we will be working and have met with a number of organizations and more to come in terms of let's establish a constitutional amendment, not legislation, because the Congress always puts waivers in there, points of order where they can duck it and kick it down the road. And that's what's happened over many years. But this would do, and it's a very detailed set of amendments to the Constitution, which would clearly define what needs to be done with real, true financial rigor. We have to get control of it. We have to get control of the rate of growth. We have to eliminate the rate of growth, and we have to be on a path to repay that national debt and pay it down and restore genuine solvency to our government. So we're looking forward to that. We've met with the Alliance for Legislative Exchange Council, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which represents and works with state legislators around the country. We'll be meeting with other organizations that are concerned about the fiscal integrity of our federal government, and we really look forward to it. Ultimately, I think there are two ways to achieve a constitutional amendment. First is through the Congress, which I think is unlikely through that procedure. The other is through the states under Article 5 of the Constitution, where they can call a constitutional convention, define the parameters of it, and come forward with a proposed amendment to the Constitution that I believe 37 states, have to approve. So it's not a runaway convention. There is no such thing as a runaway convention like that, because it will be carefully circumscribed and defined in terms of what it can do. But this has to happen. It's really important for our country. It's really important for our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
It sure is. Bob, thank you. Go ahead, Andy. Comments.
I'd like to jump in here and mention that Bob mentioned John Ramsey as the architect for the Bill of Financial Responsibilities. He is an AMAC member.
That's wonderful. Great.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we do a lot of work with members with our AMAC membership. Thank you, Andy. I want to remind folks, I gave you the top five. Number 6, AMAC will oppose federal tax increases. And I'd like for Andy to comment to the excessive job-killing regulations that we're concerned this next administration may reverse, because Donald Trump has done some marvelous work in reducing regulations. Andy, can you share with those that are listening the work that AMAC did to ensure that these excessive regulations that were really crushing business and hurting our economy, we supported Donald Trump's efforts to reduce or eliminate many of those regulations, and we're committed to doing the same going forward. It'll be interesting to see how things play out. We know that Biden is on a rampage signing many executive orders. So I hope that we don't see any of these wonderful things that Donald Trump did, see them reversed. What say you, Andy, on that?
Well, I really hope that you're right. And I think we're going to be shifting into the role of watchdog and an opposing force for any type of increase in regulations. What you're talking about brought back a memory back in July of 2020 when we were graciously invited to the South Lawn of the White House. Bob was there. AMAC had a presence there when the president announced how his regulation is getting rid of regulations, that policy and that priority for him drove down the cost of a vehicle something like $2,000. And I'm paraphrasing here.
Sure.
And the impact on each household by thousands of dollars. His deregulation policy, his deregulation plan affected for Americans. The last thing that we want to see is an increase in regulations. The last thing we want to see is a mandated $15 an hour minimum wage. We all know that that'll kill jobs for young people. The minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. It was meant for teenagers to get part-time work and to earn a living and learn how to manage their money and make a buck while they're doing it. It was not meant for a person to raise a family of 4 on. That will have a huge impact in the retail sector, fast food sectors, and restaurant sectors. We're going to be taking a look. We have no choice. We're going to continue. One thing that AMAC has always been is vigilant on watching what's coming out of Washington in terms of regulation and in terms of good laws and bad laws, and we take a stance. Yeah. And if there's a question, we ask our members, should we be involved in this area? So, I mean, we're bracing ourselves. We prepare for the worst and we hope for the best.
That's right.
This is what we're going to be doing is supporting. Look, if the Biden administration comes out with legislation or policies that's favorable, we'll be the first one telling them thank you. But if they don't, we'll be the first one in line to oppose them.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you both so much, because these are 6 major issues that I think all Americans care about. If you who are listening care about the things that we spoke about, please share this podcast with family and friends. Let your neighbors know that there is someone fighting for you. Joining AMAC truly makes a difference. Let me highlight those 6 things again once more. We promise and we are dedicated towards working on election reform, protecting your health care, working to ensure that you do continue to receive your Social Security benefit and that you see that with a cost of living increase and that future benefits are paid. We're going to work to defend your First Amendment rights of free speech, and we'll be working alongside of many other people to ensure that social media platforms aren't attacking you or going after you for your thoughts or your beliefs. We'll be working on national debt reduction and, of course, fighting against all federal tax increases. So I think that those are really great issues. I'm proud to be a part of this team. And gentlemen, you folks do a marvelous job. Andy, soon you and team will be issuing our 2020 annual report. So when that comes out, where can our listeners find the annual report? This will highlight many of AMAC's achievements in 2020. And it's important that you check it out, because your $16 annual membership fee not only gets you a subscription to the magazine, which is bi-monthly, not only gains you benefits, discounts, real savings and benefits on things like insurance and travel and dining, Hopefully we can dine soon again once the virus is behind us. But the bigger thing, I think, where the $16 AMAC membership fee really goes to is in all of our work in Washington, D.C. So that annual report, when that's released, can you let people know where they can find it?
It's going to be on amac.us as well as amacaction.org, our advocacy website, as well as amac.us, which is AMAC's website. It's going to, and believe me, we're going to make a big deal out of it in terms of letting our members know where to find it, encourage them to read it. We had a great year despite the obstacles that were posed by COVID-19 in terms of legislative victories. Our voice was definitely heard, and we had a lot of what we suggested. We had a lot what we suggested considered and end up into legislation, as well as legislation that we supported that President Trump signed into law.
That's wonderful. Well, again, I thank you both so much. Any parting comments before we wrap up today's podcast? Any important thing that I left out?
Well, I think on taxes and regulation, just a closing comment on that. Regulations are taxes, and they also increase the cost of goods sold. They increase prices, and they also eliminate jobs. And Indy is quite right that we will be very vigilant about regulations as well as taxes.
Excellent point. That's a great point.
And we do hope that the president will not seek a reduction and elimination of the Trump tax cuts, because that really stimulated the economy. It really benefited the middle class. Notwithstanding what the media characterizes as, it would be a great loss to our nation.
It sure would. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to having you guys back on a regular basis as we give updates and inform you how well we're doing in Washington. Please join or renew your AMAC membership if you're not yet a member. We have strength in numbers, and we need more members. When we go to Washington, D.C., and we tell people that we have 2 million people that stand for what we're here for, they listen. Imagine what we can do when we have 5 million members. Thank you so much for listening and joining AMAC's podcast today, Better for America, and we look forward to having you with us again next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.